My wife's best friend moved in a month ago, and since then, our marriage has reached a boiling point. It started with a late-night encounter in the kitchen, high-energy music, a white tank top, and a look of pure mischief. I used to think Diana was just an annoying houseguest, but suddenly, she became the lens through which I saw my wife in a completely different light. We found ourselves caught in a cycle of mixed signals that turned our quiet home into a high-voltage zone. Last night, the music turned up, the camera came out, and a line was crossed that changed the three of us forever. I'm not sure if we're playing a game, or if we just found a new way to live. The dynamic of a home changes the moment a stranger enters the private zone. But what happens when that stranger is the key to unlocking a side of your partner you never knew existed? Today, we're exploring a story of blurred boundaries, the power of being watched, and the night a kitchen dance turned into a life-altering realization. If you've ever felt a spark where you shouldn't, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's get into the details of how one roommate turned our average life into something unrecognizable. Diana was never supposed to be permanent. She was the wild card friend, the one who spoke her mind too loudly and made me roll my eyes at every dinner party. When my wife, Kari, suggested she move in indefinitely, I felt a wave of apprehension. Our house was our sanctuary. I didn't want a permanent spectator to our lives. But the friction between Diana and me had an edge to it that I had misdiagnosed for years. We argued because we were paying attention to each other. The change happened gradually. It was the scent of her perfume in the hallway, the sound of her laughter through the vents, and the way the atmosphere seemed to charge whenever all three of us were in the same room. I started noticing Kari watching Diana, too. There was a silent communication between them, a shared secret that I was only beginning to understand. The night it all shifted, I found Diana in the kitchen. She was filming a dance for her followers, lost in a beat that felt too heavy for a Tuesday night. She looked at me not with embarrassment, but with a challenge. It was an invitation into her world, a world where authentic meant unfiltered. I went back to our bedroom that night feeling a surge of energy I hadn't felt in a decade. When I saw Kari, I didn't see the woman I'd been married to for 12 years. I saw a woman who was being energized by the presence of her best friend that night. The walls of our bedroom felt thinner, and the fire between us burned hotter because we knew we weren't alone in the house. Things are about to cross a line we can never uncross. Before we reveal what happened next, subscribe and turn on notifications. We post stories like this every week that you won't want to miss. Are you Team Kari or Team Diana? Let me know in the comments. Back to the kitchen. The encounter in the kitchen that night didn't just reignite the spark between Kari and me, it ignited something entirely new. It was a silent acknowledgement, a shared secret that hummed beneath the surface of our daily lives. The mixed signals from Diana became less about annoyance and more about an intoxicating challenge. She'd tease me, I'd tease her back, and Kari would just smile, a knowing, mischievous smile that made my stomach flip. Diana's online world began to merge with our home life. Kari, usually reserved about social media, would often pull out her phone, a conspiratorial glint in her eye. "You have to see Diana's new video," she'd whisper, and we'd both watch, mesmerized, as Diana danced and lip-synced in her room. We weren't just watching a performance, we were witnessing a raw, unfiltered expression of self that somehow reflected back on us. One evening, the kids were at their grandparents', and the house felt vast and empty. That familiar EDM beat started playing from the kitchen. This time, when I walked downstairs, both Kari and Diana were there. They were jumping, laughing, and then, slowly, their movements shifted. It became less about exuberance and more about a sensual connection, a dance between two women who were completely comfortable in their skin. I leaned against the doorframe, watching. Kari, my wife, started to move in ways I hadn't seen in years. She was twerking, swaying her hips with a confidence that made my jaw drop. Then, Diana, with a playful slap, spanked Kari's backside, and Kari just laughed, a sound full of pure joy. It was intimate, electrifying, and I was the silent witness. Eventually, Diana saw me. She didn't stop. She just smiled, that same challenging, mischievous smile, and waved me over. The invitation was clear. I walked toward them, slowly, deliberately. Kari turned, saw me, and her eyes sparkled with the same wild energy. She began to back up, pressing her hips against me, moving to the rhythm of the music. Diana laughed, and so did I. Then Kari began to grind against me, a silent, powerful assertion of desire. My hands found her waist, pulling her closer, feeling the heat build between us. I looked up at Diana. Her phone was in her hand, the lens pointed directly at us. She wasn't just watching, she was documenting. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at Kari. Her eyes were closed, lost in the moment. Then she opened them, glanced at the phone, and instead of stopping, she bit her lip, a silent signal, and leaned into me even harder. I closed my eyes, letting the sensation wash over me, the boundary lines blurring with every shared breath. I couldn't hold back. I grabbed Kari's hips, squeezing them with an intensity that felt brand new. I opened my eyes and looked at Diana. Her face was partially hidden by her phone, but her gaze was fixed on us, her expression a mix of intensity and something akin to fascination. She seemed to like what she was seeing. Then she moved. Slowly, deliberately, she walked over, shoulder to shoulder with me. She wrapped her arm around my back, drawing me in, and then, with a subtle shift, she positioned her phone between Kari and me. She wanted me to see what her camera saw. And there, in the frame, my wife looked utterly captivating. Sensual. Free. Kari's movements became more uninhibited, her hips working against me, through my shorts. Diana leaned closer, her scent filling my senses. I felt a primal jolt, a physical tremor that hinted at the edge of control. I leaned in, my nose near Diana's ear. She tensed, a small gasp escaping her lips, then immediately leaned back into me, a silent invitation to continue. From an outsider's perspective, the scene was surreal. My shorts had shifted, my body responding to Kari's touch. Diana's arm, wrapped around me, subtly pulled my shirt higher. With each sway of Kari's hips, my body strained. And then, the head of my penis emerged, pushing past the fabric. Diana inhaled sharply, a subtle catch of breath. We were crossing a significant line, together. I began to thrust into Kari, a raw, instinctual movement. As my wife's body continued to press against me, Diana rested her head on my chest, her eyes fixed on the small screen where my body was making its debut. I waited for Kari to stop, to laugh, to call it all a joke. But when she finally turned around, her eyes were bright with a playful defiance I hadn't seen in years. She leaned in, her knee brushing against me, and kissed me deeply. Then, she took Diana's phone, turned it towards her, and with a mischievous glint in her eye, she whispered, "Isn't this your favorite song?" Diana's face, for the first time, softened with a genuine, unadulterated smile, a smile of someone who felt completely seen, loved, and celebrated. "You know it," she said, stepping away, her fingers trailing lightly across my shoulder as she began to dance for us, her eyes closed, lost in the music once more. Kari turned me to face Diana, her own gaze fixed on her friend. From behind me, Kari's hand slowly moved down my stomach, her fingertips brushing against me, a silent promise. Diana noticed our shift, felt our combined energy focused on her. Her eyes dropped to my body, then, with a smirk, she turned her back, gracefully swaying her hips as she reached down and slowly slipped her shorts off. The moment her blue lingerie disappeared, Kari's hand tightened around me, a reminder of the edge I was teetering on. She began to stroke me, slowly, deliberately, as we both watched Diana dance in our kitchen. The air in the kitchen was thick, almost heavy enough to feel. Every normal rule of our household had been suspended, replaced by a raw, unspoken agreement. Diana continued to move to the music, her back to us, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the under-cabinet lighting. She wasn't just dancing anymore, she was performing for the lens, and for us. Kari's hand was steady, her rhythm perfectly matched to the pulsing bass. She leaned her head against my shoulder, her eyes never leaving her best friend. I realized then that this wasn't just about me, or about Diana. It was about Kari reclaiming a side of herself she thought she had to bury under the weight of wife and mother. Seeing Diana's freedom had given Kari permission to be wild. Diana turned back around, her eyes locking onto ours. There was no shame in her gaze, only a fierce, vibrant energy. She moved with a slow, deliberate grace, her hands tracing the lines of her own body. She looked at Kari, then at me, then down at the way Kari was holding me. She didn't look away. Instead, she pushed herself off the wall, her movements becoming more intense, more focused. "You like watching her, don't you?" Kari whispered in my ear, her breath hot against my skin. "I like watching both of you," I managed to say, my voice sounding foreign even to myself. Diana's moans began to punctuate the music, soft, rhythmic exhales that filled the gaps between the beats. She was lost in her own sensation now, her hand disappearing beneath the lace of her lingerie. The sight was hypnotic. She was a hardwood floor feminist, strong and independent, yet here she was, completely vulnerable and empowered at the exact same time. I felt the surge coming, the point of no return. My breathing was ragged, my chest rising and falling in sync with the rhythm of Kari's hand. I closed my eyes for a second, tilting my head back, letting the sensory overload take over. "Yes, baby," Kari whispered, her grip tightening, her speed increasing. I opened my eyes just in time to see Diana leaning against the counter, her head thrown back, her body trembling in the same frequency as mine. The music seemed to swell, a final crescendo that pulled all three of us toward the edge. When the moment finally broke, it wasn't chaotic. It was an explosion of release that felt like it cleared the air of years of built-up tension. Kari's hand never wavered, guiding the moment until the very end. The last few seconds were a blur of motion and sound, ending with Diana leaning back against the wall, her chest heaving, a look of pure, exhausted joy on her face. The music didn't stop, but the energy shifted. The spicy atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a profound sense of calm. We didn't scramble to hide or act like we'd done something wrong. We stood there in the quiet kitchen, the three of us, breathing in the aftermath of a line we had crossed together. Later that night, the three of us ended up on the couch, the TV playing a mindless reality show. Diana's head was on one of my shoulders, Kari's on the other. It was the most normal we had felt in weeks, yet everything was different. Diana reached over and took Kari's hand, massaging her fingers right across my lap. There was no more friction. No more mean comments or eye-rolling. The house felt balanced. We hadn't just added a roommate, we had added a new dimension to our lives. I didn't know where we were going or what the rules would be tomorrow, but as I sat there between the two most important women in my life, I knew one thing for sure, that average life was over. And I wasn't looking back. The music eventually stopped that night, and the kitchen was cleaned, but the house never felt the same. What started as an intrusion, a best friend who I thought would ruin our peace, turned out to be the very thing that saved our marriage from becoming another average statistic. We didn't just break the rules, we realized that the rules were never ours to begin with. Kari and I are closer than ever, and Diana, well, let's just say she's not looking for her own place anymore. Sometimes, the thing you're most afraid of is exactly what you need to feel alive again, but it makes you wonder, if someone moved into your home today, would they see a spark worth saving, or would they just see the silence? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to hear more about what happened when the high-value man from my previous story met his match, click the video on the left. Or, check out our latest deep dive into secret lives on the right. I'm Late Night Confession Stories, and remember, the most dangerous people are the ones you never see coming. Thanks for watching.